Hey, Rebel Bankers, this is your host, Chris Noggle, and welcome back to the show. I've got an awesome podcast for you today, and I got a cool guest, and we're going to really get in the weeds today because this is my old stomping grounds, what he does. So we got Viktor Jiracek with us today, and his company's Sell Your Gainesville Home Today, and we're going to dive into Viktor's story in just a second, but let's pause and take a moment to talk about all of your journeys to becoming a Rebel Banker. Now, the journey, they always say the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, but that single step involves you taking action on knowledge. And so many people believe that knowledge is power, but that's bullshit. Excuse my language, but knowledge is not power. It's the application of knowledge that actually gives you the power and that actually gets things done. And Viktor's going to talk a lot about that because he wouldn't be where he's at if he didn't take action, and you won't be where you want to be if you don't take that first step, which is action on your goals and on the knowledge that you receive in this podcast. And I'm going to motivate you because that's what I do. I like kicking people in the butt and getting them to do things. So here's the deal. I'm going to give you something for free, and all you need to do is take action. You're going to go to chrisnoggle.com. Very simple, just my name.com. And what you're going to do is you're going to, on your little index finger, one swipe up, and it's going to give you the option to get a book for free. So I want you to take action. I want you to get one of my 2 books. I don't care if it's Private Money Guide, which is where all the money is for your real estate deals, or Mapping Out the Millionaire Mystery. Grab one of these books for free. You do have to pay the shipping because I'm not paying for the USPS to ship the book to your house. So that's your only responsibility. But I want to know how many of you will actually take action. So that's it. Viktor, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So I'd like to dive into your business. Like, tell me a little bit about your business and what you guys do, and then let's take a trip back in time. And we don't have to go back very far, but we'll get into that in a second. So tell everybody what you guys do at Sell Your Gainesville Home Today, and then we'll go from there.
Oh, happy to. So primarily a fix and flipper here in Gainesville. Did about 20 flips last year, looking to do about 30 flips this year, and just primarily fix and flip. So I've done rentals, done wholesaling, but we buy houses, fix them up, sell them. We do all either in Gainesville or the surrounding area, Alachua County, but that's pretty much the story.
So that's an interesting one because a lot of people right now, where we're at in the market, and just after COVID, or actually some would say we're still in the midst of COVID, and I believe that. And, it's been an interesting market. The real estate market's booming, literally just going nuts. The stock market's going nuts. And a lot of people think that flipping houses is something that was great in the past, but can't be done today because they can't find deals. All the prices are way too high. They can't seem to make sense of their numbers. So I want to definitely dive a lot into what you're doing, like what your secret sauce is that's getting deals, because you're obviously having no trouble. You did 20 flips last year and you're on your way to do 30 this year. So there's a little more to that story than just, people complaining and saying they can't find deals. I think those are the people that, get all the knowledge and they don't take action on it. So we need to give them the secret sauce. But before we do that, Viktor, let's go back. I believe when you were 18 years old, you started and did your first flip. Let's start there. Let's talk about that very first real estate deal you did.
Yeah, absolutely. So what happened was I was 18, had some money saved up, had a little bit of an inheritance, ended up buying like a condo. Small condo. I used to live in Utah, so I bought it there in Utah. Bought it for about $55,000.
Hold on a second. You bought a $55,000 condo in Utah?
That's right.
I bet you are up. Back, yeah. I understand, but I bet you any money you wish you had still had that one today.
Probably, yeah. So yeah, I ended up getting started that way. Bought my first one, and went from there. It was actually a rental for that first one. I had that property for maybe a year or two, and then end up selling it kind of like a quick fire sale, like a distress sale, because I had some business. I had a business, and that business went under, so I needed money. So I sold that property. Happy to get into all of that good stuff. But then that person sold the property, I think 2 or 3 years later, for 110. So like it doubled, especially in Utah. And it
now, probably tripled.
Who knows where it is?
Probably tripled, man. My best friend lives in Salt Lake City. That is one of the craziest markets that I've seen anywhere, but for rightful reasons. But let's talk a little bit about that. Like, before we move on to like the rest of it, that's a good one to talk about. So that was your first flip and you got into it. Why did you decide to get into that real estate deal back then? Like, what was it that motivated you to get into real estate?
I always had an interest in real estate, and luckily my family has a background in real estate. So I had some money set aside. So I figured like, hey, let's do this, and just went into it. And, it was a good learning lesson. I'm lucky I got started early. But luckily, like, it had a family backing on it. I had family to help me out get started. And I wish I wouldn't have squandered the opportunity. That's a big part of it, because it's one thing to buy it. So when I bought it, I sold it for the same price a year or two later, because it was a distressed type of thing. But
Well, let's get into that. Like, what happened? Like, you had to sell this property for the same price. There was a fire sale, as you call it. Like, you had another business. What was this other business that you were doing?
So what happened? So I was in college full time. I had a full ride scholarship, but decided, like, college isn't for me. I always had that entrepreneurial zeal. I'm like, okay, college isn't for me. I got to do something else. And then it didn't make sense for me to go to a different degree, because I was doing engineering. I was studying engineering. I'm like, I want to be an entrepreneur. It doesn't make sense for me to study business and become an entrepreneur. Like, I'm not going to learn it in a university. I need to learn it in the real world. So I ended up dropping out. During that time, I started following a mentor, or a gentleman. He recommended to buy a business. Like, you can start a business, and that takes a lot of time. That's a lot of effort. But what if you just buy a business, and that way you have something existing? Okay, boom, boom, done. And you can just grow and scale that. So it's a lot easier. I was like, okay, cool. I'm in. I'm sold. So I basically dropped out of college and decided, like, hey, I'm going to go buy a business instead. And bought a business. Found something within my price range, something that I could buy, and that tanked. I got into it for the wrong reasons. I didn't listen to anybody either with regards to advice on how to run it. So didn't go well. So basically that business was bleeding money. So I was like, okay, I need money. So I sold that property and basically lost that money too, because I just wasted it away.
What kind of business was it?
So that was like wood flooring / wood floor refinishing business.
Interesting. So, like, where you go into a house and you refinish all the floors?
That was pretty much it. Yeah. That was
Wow. So yeah, that seems like an interesting kind of business for you to get into as your first business. And that one failed, I assume. And that's why you sold the property, just to kind of keep that one afloat?
Correct. Yeah. So I spent more money than I had and got into a ton of credit card debt. So I was like, hey, I need to pay off this credit card debt. And I just owed people a lot of money. So I sold the property and, used part of those, if not all of those proceeds to pay off those debts.
Now, but why did, like, a business like that seems like it could be a pretty lucrative business, but you're always going to be capped to your team and the amount of houses that you can actually do in time. Like, what would you like attribute to your failure in that business? That if you had to sit there and tell somebody else that was thinking to become an entrepreneur and maybe they were going to get into that business, what would be your suggestions on that?
If someone wants to get into the wood floor refinishing business, it's the same basics as any business. So I made the problem of I was just trying to grow too fast. Like, I saw this business and it was making X, and I was like, I want to get it to 4X in 3 months. So I'd throw a ton of money in marketing, and it was all unproven marketing techniques. So I'd like put ads in like a magazine, and I tried direct mail. I tried this and this and this for the wood flooring business. And then I was hiring the wrong people. Like, they wouldn't do a great job, and I'd have to get refunds, and then I'd still be out of pocket paying people and, supplies and all that stuff. So it was just like anything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. So let's put it that way.
All right. So that was then. Hopefully, that's never going to resurface, but it's a lot of learning lessons. And what I'm trying to get across is, in any entrepreneur's journey, there's going to be failures, and failures are just proving grounds, just learning lessons if you decide to get back up and fight the next fight, which you did. So let's talk about that next fight.
Cool. Yeah. So that was that business. Part of the mistake I made, because I bought a business, but with my specific budget, I basically bought a job. Like, it wasn't really a business. It was a guy running it, and then he sold it, and I was going to take his place. There wasn't any really employees or anything. I built that later. So I figured, okay, I bought too small. Let me go bigger. If I buy a bigger business with more established employees, that'll probably work. I was implementing a strategy called a roll-up. So this is really famous and bigger in the 80s, where basically, like, you buy lots of businesses, you put them together, and then you can sell that. So instead of buying, you buy businesses that made 3X, and then you can sell it at 10X. So that was a pretty cool strategy to me. I'm like, okay, cool. Wanted to get into healthcare. So got into healthcare, tried to buy some of these home healthcare businesses. Didn't go well. I got close. I, built a board. I, got some, big four accounting and legal. Then I did all the steps, started to approach SBA banks. I got close on a couple deals, never closed anything. And I was in that process for maybe like 2 years, 3 years. And then I decided to pull the plug on it. And then luckily I didn't. I know someone else who did. It was successful. I think they purchased 2, 3 of those businesses, and they didn't know how to run it because, then I was a young kid and that kid was young as well. So getting into a brand new business, you're buying it, lots of debt, and you don't know how to run it. That doesn't bode well. So that's what ended up happening there. So didn't get a deal, didn't purchase anything, but that's, happy I didn't.
And how old were you at that time?
Oof. So that must have been, so that was like 2015 to 2016.
Okay.
Yeah. So that must have been.
So you were in your early 20s because you started at 18 with that house in Salt Lake City.
It was early 20s. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, early 20s. I mean, that's young for entrepreneurs. So commend you for that. That's awesome. And I know there's a lot of people that listen to my show that, are young and looking for that thing. So hopefully that you guys can take some golden nuggets for what he did and what he did wrong. And maybe, kind of then when you're making those decisions, don't make the same mistakes. So that was the home healthcare business. What came next?
So that was home healthcare. Because I had run out of money, I decided let's just work for a home healthcare company for a little bit. So I was an administrator for a company for maybe about a year. So I was kind of in a corporate job and always had that entrepreneurial zeal. So I knew hey, corporate, this is just temporary stepping stones. Corporate, I got to live, I got to eat. So I got to make some money in the meantime. And then what was interesting this entire time while I was doing this, I always had this feel hey, I want to get into real estate. So it was always hey, I'm going to make a ton of money in wood flooring and then I'll put it into real estate. Or hey, I'm going to make a ton of money in healthcare and then I'll put it into real estate. I just had a light bulb moment one day where I figured, let's just do real estate. Let's, cut out the middleman. Let's cut out that middle step and just get right into it. So always had an interest in it. I was trying to rebel from the family business, family background, do my own thing. And just fell in love with real estate again. Hey, this is lucrative. This is, you can do well here. You can help people. There's all these benefits. So got into that. Started with wholesaling. I did 2 wholesale deals. First one made $3,000. Second one made $3,500. And then I decided to get into flipping because that's where I thought where the money was. Wanted bigger checks. And now I'm doing 20, 30, 40,000 a deal, which is awesome. I'm very excited for that.
And during this whole thing, so you went, from the first house failed, then you got into the wood floor business, that failed, then you got into home health care, trying to stack those businesses. What did you call that model?
Roll up.
Roll up. So you got into that roll up. Fruit roll up. I love them. Everybody loves fruit roll ups. So you got into that. That didn't work. So then you ended up staying in that industry, but getting a corporate job, kind of just to regroup, catch your breath, figure out what the next play was. But this whole time, what I like about it is you always had the end in mind. You always knew where you wanted to be. You needed to find the path to get you there. And it just came one day with a light bulb moment. You're just like, you know what? Screw this. Why am I wasting my time? I'm just going to go into real estate. Now, were you still in Salt Lake City at this time, or was this in Florida? Where were you living then?
So this time I was all over. So for the healthcare stuff, I was in Nashville because that's the healthcare capital of the world. So I decided hey, let me move to Nashville there. And let me be in the heart of it. So I was in Nashville. And then with the home health, I eventually moved to Chicago. So that's where I was.
Wow. Nashville and Chicago. Nashville's a great real estate market. So I just love how you're going, you didn't know it then, but Salt Lake City and then Nashville. And it's just you look at these areas, holy cow, if you could have just grabbed 1 or 2 and just held on to them, those would have been good assets to have. So you ended up deciding to go full into real estate. Let's start there. Let's talk about what was that like? Because a lot of people, when you get into real estate, they start like you did. A couple wholesale deals, you made, $6,500, so now you're off, you got a little cash. What was the next step? A lot of people don't enter real estate because they think they need a lot of money to do it, especially flipping, because flipping is very cash intensive. Believe me, I know 263 of those puppies, and I know how difficult they can be from a cash flow standpoint. So how did you bridge that gap?
Yeah, happy to share that. So I was working at the corporate job, realized that wasn't a fit. I really wasn't getting ahead financially. I know a lot of people can relate to that. I didn't really like the work either. It was no offense to my employer, just, I didn't like the job, and that was not on them. It was just the nature of the job. So wanted to make a change. I heard about wholesaling. I thought that was a really cool idea. Hey, you don't have to necessarily own the property. You can get into it. I was like, okay, this is awesome. So did those 2 wholesale deals. And with wholesaling, you find the seller, negotiate, and then you find a cash buyer and the investor, and they want a good deal too. So they kind of negotiate you, they kind of beat you up. And I never liked that. I was like, I don't like being in the middle here. Then I saw the cash buyers and the investors. I'm like, hey, they are making a lot more than I am. They're making 20, 30, 40,000. I'm making, 3,000, and they're beating me up over my assignment fee, trying to get my assignment fee from 3,000 to 2,000. So, what the hell's going on here? So saw like flipping as the opportunity. I'm like, okay, if I just find a seller, which I've been doing, and take it down myself, okay, cool, awesome. So what I did, because back then, obviously with 2 failed businesses in a row, like it's not like I had a lot of money. I had a low credit score in the low 500, so like I was pretty limited. So what I ended up doing is doing like a money partner. So found a money partner. So basically, like I would find the deal, I would help with the renovations or manage the renovation. I'd help sell it. I'd be the sweat equity. I'd be the boots on the ground. And they would put in all the money. They'd cover that. And then we'd do like a profit split. And did that on the first deal, on the first flip. And
what was the profit split you did in the beginning? If he was bringing here, was it he or was it a she?
It was a she, yeah.
Okay, so, and I wanted to make sure I was correct on that. So she would bring the cash into the deal. You guys partnered in the company. What was the split? Because a lot of people don't know like what to do that. They always think, well, I'm doing all the work, I should make the most. And the person with the money says, I'm putting the money in, I should make the most. How did you do it?
So that one was, and it might be different today. So that one we bought it for 105. We put in about 28. And then we sold for 170. So a little under 30K net is how we shook out on that one. With regards to the split, and I've done it differently nowadays, and it's really going to be up to you and the partner, but it was 70-30. So 70% them, 30% me. And I'm still happy I did it because it got me started. So
absolutely,
if you want to do the math on that one, I made about 9K. So I was much happier than making, 3.5. I made 9,000. And then that set me up really well for like other partnerships and me starting to do deals on my own. So that's what I'd recommend for your audience. Like, if you can find a money partner, just get a deal done, build a track record. It becomes easier. Your first one is definitely your hardest deal. But once you start to build that track record, like, hey, I flipped that, I made this much, just every single step of the process becomes so much easier.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. And Victor, I even think if you had to give up 90% to the investor to get that first deal done, it would have been the best 90% you ever gave up because you got that experience. You built that track history. You built that relationship with that particular partner, and you can leverage that to other partners, to that one. I mean, that's where it starts for so many of us. The first one's the hardest, but then, so that wasn't your first though. So what year was this that we did this money partner deal?
That one was 2018.
Which I believe is when you had mentioned to me that you really went all in on this. You said, I'm going to just do this full time. So 2018, your first flip you do, you make $9,000. How does it catapult from there? Because I know you did a lot more than one deal that year.
Yeah. So first year did 2, and then did 8. Then last year did 20, and then here we are shooting for 30. So what that did, so they got me a track record. Continued that partner was ecstatic, as you can imagine. They're like, okay, let's do more. So we did more, continued to do more with that partner. Because I had a track record, I found another money partner, and they were going to do 50-50 with me. So I'm like, okay, awesome, cool. Now we're getting somewhere. And then like started doing deals with them, and then slowly transitioned like, okay, cool. I got some money. I, can fix up my credit, boom, boom, can start doing my own deals. So I've made that transition as well. But if, to build on your earlier point, if I hadn't done that first one, if I would have balked at like, hey, 70-30, what are you crazy? There's no way. And if I said no and turned it down and not have gotten that deal, then I wouldn't be where I was today. So just getting started, and I'm with you, like, even if it's 90-10, like, just do it, get it started.
Absolutely. And I think there's a lot to be said about that. And, look at, I mean, that one deal catapulted you into doing all these deals now. And let's kind of now talk a little bit about flipping, because flipping's a tough business. Me and my wife had the show on HGTV doing this, and there's not a moment that I can look back on and think of flipping as just being this joyful thing. I mean, the only days I remember being fun, well, there's 3 moments were really fun. When you got the contract accepted, there's a big celebratory part there. Then demo day was always super fun in the beginning. And then I had demo crews after that. And then the last day was the day when I got the check, when it closed, which usually was a real bear to get to. And then the whole rest of that was just kind of the grind. So let's talk a little bit about like flipping and what it is and how you've kind of managed to do this many, because you don't do 20 and 30 flips a year and do it yourself, because if you were just in there swinging hammers, you might have gotten 2, 3, if you're lucky, 4 done a year. So you obviously built crews. I would assume you have project managers.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, when I started out, I was doing a lot of the work myself, and I would like help out with the painting, help out with the flooring, help out with the demo. And as
Isn't
we
demo day just fun, man? You just go in there and break
It
shit.
really is. It really is. I would post pictures online and on Facebook, and everyone was like, "Hey, anytime next day that's demo day, I want to be there." Because everyone wanted to join in and smash some cabinets or whatever, rip it out. And yeah, so when I started, I was doing a lot of the work myself. And as we started to do more deals, I realized like, hey, this is unsustainable. Like I would work, even if I worked 4 hours a day on a property, I'd come home and I'm like, I'm exhausted. I don't want to call anybody. I don't want to do any paperwork. Like I just, I'm exhausted. So I realized like, okay, if I'm doing the work myself, that's not really scalable. So started to hire it out, and then went to like a subcontractor model. So I went from do it yourself to more like a done with you model. So I'd hire a painter. Okay, good job, pay him. Okay, hire a flooring guy. Okay, good job, pay him. But then I found out like, hey, I'm the project manager. I'm the general contractor. I'm managing that. So there's a limit in terms of like how much I can scale that. So I was like, okay, cool. What's the next model? So next model was like general contractor, project manager type of setup. So rather than me having to pay the painter, pay the flooring guy, I basically hand off the project to someone like, hey, this is the budget. This is what we want to do. You handle A to Z. Check in with me if you need anything. And I just basically pay one check. So switch to that model, and that's a lot more scalable. So that's basically where I'm at now. So more like that project manager. Just really depends on the deal. Sometimes if it's a simple deal, project manager. If it's just like, hey, paint, flooring, boom, done. If it's like a total gut job, everything's brand new, I go more towards like general contractor. So it's they handle it because it gets more intricate with all the specific repairs and coordinating everything and all that stuff. But that's the evolution that I've gone through with regards to renovation.
All right, continuing on with contractors, general contractors, project managers. Everybody's got war stories in this, because this is one of the hardest parts about flipping houses is, you think, in the fairy tale land, you watch a TV show, you're like, wow, 23 minutes. They just flipped the house and made $100,000. I can do that. You dive in and you start doing it. And, you think it's just, oh, well, I'll just hire people. I'll just hire a contractor, or just hire a contractor to do it all, or I'll hire an electrician. Like, what are your war stories with contractors? Because for me, it was the single hardest thing of the entire business was managing the contractors and just making sure they showed up or it didn't just take my money and run.
Mm-hmm. So that was definitely a challenge. Probably one of my worst stories was I had a painter on a house, and like what was happening. So there was a lot of red flags up front. So like he painted the exterior and he did a good job. Like, okay, you can go ahead and tackle the interior. And what was weird, like every day he'd ask for a draw. So he asked for a deposit. I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of weird, but I'll pay you a deposit up front to pay for materials. Okay, cool. So I paid him the deposit. And then every day he did work, he's like, hey, I need another $100 off of my draw. It was like $1,000 job. And he's like, hey, I need another $100. I was like, okay, that's kind of weird. So the first time I accepted, the second time I put my foot on the ground, I was like, hey, you haven't made any real progress. You got to finish this thing. And if you don't finish this thing, you're not going to get paid. So he got really mad, upset, and then basically quit. So he basically quit right there. He was sending me pictures, and that's how I was managing the job. I was really swamped at the time, so couldn't really focus on that. And he was sending me pictures, and all the pictures he sent me looked awesome. Like, okay, he's doing good. He's making good progress. And then I went there in person. It was total garbage. Like he'd barely, just half-assed it and barely put any work in. So I ended up hiring another painter. They had to start from scratch. So I had to pay twice for that same work. And the thing about it was, it's not just the money I spent, it was the time as well. Cause this entire process took like a week or two. And it was a lot of hassle around it. He was like, I'm going to sue you. You owe me this money.
Crying out loud.
Every threat in the book. And then interestingly enough, 3 months later, 6 months later, he's texting me back like, hey, do you have any work? Hey, can I work for you, or, do any painting? So
isn't that funny? Isn't that funny? They think, oh yeah, hey, nothing went wrong. I didn't take money from you. I didn't walk off the job. Oh, hey, do you need any more work? It's just, that's the mentality. And what advice would you give to brand new real estate investors looking to get into flipping as to how to deal with contractors? Like, what advice could you give them?
Tying to that story and just in general, I'd say don't ignore red flags. So red flags are things like, hey, if they're not responsive, like if you text them and they text you back a week later, like that's a red flag. If they don't show up on time and don't show up consistently, like if they're late one time, that's one thing. But if they're late consistently, it's that sort of thing. And those other red flags, like if you have a bad gut feeling about the person, that's a red flag. So don't ignore it. It's so easy. Like, oh no, it's fine. It'll be fine. They'll get it done. They're making progress. But it's just one of those things where you don't ignore the red flags. And there's a lot of things that can pop up there.
That's good. That's some good advice. Now, so you kept going with this, and that's a great war story, and there's probably lots more of those. So where was the money coming from for the flips as you started to scale into doing 3, 5, 10 of these things? Was it always the joint venture partner, or did you evolve and start figuring money out differently? Like, what did that story look like?
Yeah, so I started to transition to more like hard money. And then for the down payment, I get like gap funding, or I get like a private money lender to lend. They get second position, they get, percentage interest. So I started to switch to that model. So it's more like a pure debt model versus like an equity model. And that's been going good. I still do that. If I need to put money into my own deals, I'll do it. But I'm still sticking to that like kind of hard money blend, private money blend.
Okay, that's a good model. I mean, we did a lot of that, and then we evolved pretty much solely to private investors and working with private lenders because it was just more nimble, a lot easier, and you didn't have to jump through all the red, the hoops and everything else with the hard money lenders. Plus, the points start to add up eventually. Let's go to what I think is the most important thing, especially in today's market, and this is where I really want you to elaborate if you can for the audience. And like, how are you finding deals right now? What is your secret sauce? Because this is where people are struggling. They're all struggling to get deals. They're saying, oh, there's no good deals. I can't get them for the right price. How are you doing it?
So I think at a high level, I tend to avoid on market and MLS deals. So of the 20 flips last year, only one I found on the MLS. So what happened, like a realtor got a hold of us and said like, hey, we got this deal. And then we saw it, put an offer on it, and eventually made it happen. But that was only one of 20. So the vast majority of everything we're getting is like off market, direct to seller, dealing directly with the home seller and getting it that way. So just cutting out the middleman, so like no realtors, no auction, just directly to the seller has been the most success. To break that down further, about half the deals come from wholesalers. And then the other half come from like self-sourced, like cold calling or like website or, just like a blend of things that we do there. But that's pretty much the breakdown. But just trying to get off the beaten path as much as possible is a great high-level principle for this sort of thing. So if you are looking at public deals that everyone else is looking at, that's on Zillow, that everyone else has access to, that's going to be reflected in the price. Like the price is going to be bid up, multiple offers, numbers don't make sense. So you need to get off the beaten path. Start talking to people, start talking to sellers who nobody else is talking to.
Yeah, no, that's important. I mean, you definitely got to do what everybody else is unwilling to do. And, I think a lot of people, like when they first get in, they all know this. They know that, the successful people, the wholesalers and all the people finding the deals, they're not going to the MLS, but it's just that easy path. People don't want to do extra work. They don't want to learn something new. So where do they go? They go to Zillow. And then they look for words like foreclosure. I mean, how many flippers do you find that are like, oh yeah, I just buy foreclosures? Really? You see, the banks figured out what we do a long time ago, and they put this little buzzword in their listings, foreclosure. And everybody thinks a foreclosure is a deal. Most of the time, a foreclosure is more expensive than a full price MLS listing when you actually boil it down per square foot, because they learned the game, and good for them. Like, of course they've evolved, but you got to evolve faster than them. And you've been able to do that. Now, you mentioned you get a lot of deals from wholesalers. Let's talk a little bit about your relationship with wholesalers. A lot of times that can be a dead end because wholesalers can be greedy. They can try to, really take advantage of you. How have you managed working with the wholesalers you are?
Yeah, so luckily I've had the experience myself of being a wholesaler, so I understand what it's like to be in their shoes. So I try to take it from that angle. Like I try to be easy to work with, be transparent in my numbers, try not to beat them up on price. I try to lay out the price like, hey, this is how I buy houses. This is what I got for what I can sell it for. This is what I got for repairs. That means my offer is this. So I don't try to like lowball them or nickel and dime them with regards to pricing. So I just try to keep it as, just create a relationship as much as possible. I know and this is what I didn't like with being a wholesaler myself, is people would do the opposite. So they'd like try to nickel and dime me, and they're like, hey, I can't do 105, I can do 104. And it's like, it's still a deal at either of those prices, but you're beating me up on my assignment fee. And, that's how I was making money. So it's just one of those things, like trying to build a relationship, trying to make it transparent. With one wholesaler, I bought 6 deals or 7 deals last year. With another one, I bought 2 or 3. And then I'm typically at the top of everyone's list. So just not being combative, because I know a lot of people who do that, where it's like, hey, I'm the cash buyer, they're the wholesaler. I got to get as good a deal as I can. I like to see it like cooperative. So that's how I like to look at it. I'd rather get closer to their price, but be able to squeeze out a couple deals, a couple extra flips per year, than trying to beat them up and trying to save a couple grand.
No, I think that's good. Now, one thing I know I always did, we had a wholesale operation and we also did a lot of the flipping. But one thing that I was always doing as a wholesaler, I was always very transparent. You mentioned that word, so I want to talk about that for a second. When you're dealing with wholesalers, do you ask them what they paid for the property? Like, I know a lot of wholesalers won't divulge that. They think that that's like some secret that they can't tell the flipper. Like, I got it for 100 and I'm charging you 110. It's like there's some secret. Like, it's like, dude, when I close, this is how I'd always treat it. I would say to them, because I can't tell you what that is. Okay, so when I close on the deal and I look at the HUD and I see that you got it for this, and that's that, and I'm okay with you making money, but I see what you got it for, and you're the one that made way too much, and I'm not going to make anything because you took all the profit. You think I'm going to buy more deals from you? I'm not. So, like, how do you look at that standpoint? Because I know a lot of wholesalers, like, they put a price on it, but they won't tell you what their assignment fee is. How do you handle that?
Yeah. So if I have a relationship with them, they'll probably tell me. So I'm not worried about it. I try to build that relationship. And if I can make the money that I want to make on a flip, I really don't care what they got it for. So sometimes I've paid like $1,000 wholesale fee. Sometimes I've paid $5,000, $10,000. I think, I've done a couple, $20,000, $25,000. Highest I've paid is $40,000.
Whoa.
They did really well on that.
And how much did you make on that one?
For that one specifically, I think we made $25,000 net.
So the wholesaler made 40, you made 25.
Right. So it wasn't a home run deal. We made a couple of mistakes there, but we still made a good profit. Like I would still do that deal again today. But that's a part of the process, and just being comfortable with that. And if I have a relationship, to build on what you're asking, so if I have a relationship with them, they'll tell me. If I'm trying to build a relationship, then I'm less concerned about that. But it naturally comes out, especially with my approach. It'll naturally come out like what they got it for. They might say like, hey, Victor, I honestly can't do that. I have it for this much. So it's part of the relationship approach that I take.
I like that. So now going into 2021, here we are, you have a goal of 30 houses. Like, where do you see the markets going? I mean, 2021, and let's reach a little further. Where do you think we're going to be at 2021, 2022, 2023? What's your forecast?
So what's interesting, and I'd love to get your take on it. When I think about flipping, because you're on the buy side and you're on the sell side. So I have the theory where it's always the same amount of difficulty, but it's either really hard to buy and easy to sell, which is what I'd say right now is like, it's harder to buy and find a deal, but anytime you sell anything, it's multiple offers, you're going to get above asking. I think it's going to shift because in nature, there's waves and there's cycles and like there's a pendulum swing. So I think it's going to swing eventually the other way. I don't know when. It might be next month, might be next year, might be next couple of years. But I think it'll shift. So it's going to be going hard from like really hard to buy to easier to buy. And it's going to be, harder to sell. So I think it's just going to have that natural momentum. I've stopped trying to like time the markets. I was even saying back in 2015, 2016, I was like, this is a crazy market, especially in Utah. I was like, this is going to crash any minute, any moment, any month now. And I've stopped doing that because I would have missed out on, 5-6 years of a bull run here. So, but that's when I think it's going to happen. It's just natural. If you look to nature, you can see a lot of these principles that happen and play out in real life. And that's, I think, what we're going to see is it's damn hard to buy a house, super easy to sell it. I think that's going to shift the other way here pretty soon.
I think that's really smart. And I love that you said you can't time the market. A lot of people are, and I know I used to try to do this too. And it's the biggest mistake somebody can make because, if you're in real estate, there's always a deal. if you find the deal, if you look hard enough. And I know right now is one of the hardest times that I've seen in my lifetime to find deals. Everything's very expensive. You really got to work hard to find the deals, but you're doing it by building relationships. And single-handedly, that will be the best methodology. It just takes time. And a lot of people want that quick fix. In terms of the overall markets, where are they going to go? I'll tell you, they're going only one place and one place only, and that's down. And that is facts. You may not agree with it. You may not believe it, but you know what? We'll see who's right in the end. And it's probably not going to happen until 2022. If you look at all the signs, all the cycles and all the, economic data and the economists that are talking about this day in and day out, it seems like everybody's ignoring 2022 is going to mark the moment where it all flips, and it's going to flip. It's going to flip hard. It's not going to be pretty. 2023, I would expect to be awful, but it will be good for experienced investors that are ready for it, that are capitalized well, because the one thing that happens is when things shift, you got to understand the stock market goes down first. That'll probably be 2022. I don't know when, third quarter, whatever. I can't tell you exactly when. You can't time the market, but you can time cycles and patterns. So when that goes down, real estate's got another 6 months to as much as 9 months. It's a lagging indicator. So when the stock market goes down, that's your warning. The bell goes off. At that point, you need to basically rush and get your deals done, because you don't want to be in the deals at the price that you bought at the top when you can only sell closer to the bottom. It won't be all the way down. So that's the biggest risk. And that's where a lot of people in 08, now 08 was different. 08 caught people really off guard and it just fell apart incredibly quick. That won't happen this time. This will be way worse than 08, but for real estate investors, it will not, because the low interest rates that we see today are what are fueling the real estate business. That's not going to stop. You're going to see a low interest rate market. You're going to see deflation, not so much inflation. You're going to see deflation, which will all play into these low, interest rates and everything, which will still keep that real estate market nice and propped up. And if you're in the single family space, I think you're going to do good. I think there's going to always be a demand for single families, but not that high end and not that low end. It's going to be that nice little, kind of lower middle price point. And I think if you spend some time this year really fortifying your relationships, not with hard money lenders, because they will shut down when this happens, but fortifying your relationship with private lenders that have money that they're lending, maybe from self-directed IRAs, from home equity lines that they have opened up. They're going to be your biggest asset, because they're not going to have anywhere else for their money to go. You will become the shining light to them, because you will be the only one that can pay them a return, because the stock market will not give them a return anymore. They can't get good interest rates on anything that they put their money into. So you will be that one shining light. And anyone that understands that, I think, is going to crush it. Because if you can build those relationships and take those relationships into these depressionary times, because I'm going to say it, that's what we're going to be in, then you're going to be just fine. But you're going to have to be very nimble, patient, and you're going to have to understand that when this warning bell goes off, you better get out. I don't want to say liquidate, but get out of what you're in and then get ready for the next phase, because it's going to be very different. So didn't mean to go long in that, but that's kind of the business I'm in and what I do. And it's something I think everybody needs to heed the warnings that are all over the place. Signs, everywhere signs. And if you can't see that we're in a bubble on almost every asset class right now, then you are just simply blind. But it doesn't mean that game over. It means actually your game is about to begin. And if you get this next phase of your game right, dude, the rest gets really easy. But also, you might want to look at, what you're doing and just look more at a rental portfolio, because you might have to take some of those flips and turn them into, a BRRRR and just hold them for rental, during that little weird time that we're going to hit. So that's what I would say about that. But enough about my thoughts. That's irrelevant, but I just wanted to kind of share with you kind of the things I know that are coming down the pipe. But I think that's great. What during this whole journey, and it's interesting, from 18 years old to 26, you're still a young man. During this journey, what would you say has been your biggest internal obstacle in everything that you've had to deal with?
Biggest internal obstacle. Yeah, interesting. So, yeah, I think a big part of it is, so it's one thing to know you're going to be successful, but it's another thing to actually see that success and okay, what am I going to do with it? I used to run into a lot of self-sabotage, hey, I'm successful now. Let's, spend that money, or this was all, subconscious. Let's throw away that money. Just slowly getting out of that cycle. Just honestly, but I think the biggest thing is just realizing you're in your own way. And if you're not achieving what you want to achieve, it's typically nobody else's fault but your own. So you have to take that full ownership of that. I think that's the biggest thing. I would always blame external circumstances before, a couple of years ago, like, hey, no, it was obviously the business that was wrong, or is this that was wrong, or is the people I worked with that was wrong, but it was actually me. And I think, trying to get over that and not being a self-saboteur is really a good lesson. And I know people can relate to that. Like they want to do something, but they get in their own way and they just cause their own downfall.
That's a great answer. Really is. And, it's just some great stuff, but like, how would people learn more about what you're doing? You sent me over a link and I loved it, of all your portfolio, all the properties. And I love it. You did the before, the afters. They were really just like the high level stuff. I think that's really powerful. And that's what people want to see. How do people learn more about what you guys do at Sell Your Gainesville Home Today?
So you can go to the website, Sell Your Gainesville Home Today. You can find me on Facebook. It's my full name, Viktor Jiracek.
You might want to spell that because your last name's Jiracek, but it's not spelled like Jiracek. So tell the audience how to spell your last name to find you on Facebook.
So Viktor with a K, Viktor, and then Jiracek, Jiracek. So you can find me online, find me on the website. And then if if there's anything I can help with, feel free to reach out. I flip primarily here in Gainesville or Alachua County. So if anyone has a deal, I'm always looking for good deals, good flips. But I'm pretty accessible. So if folks want to reach out, I'm here to help.
Awesome, Viktor. Thank you so much for dropping some serious golden nuggets. For any of you watching, listening, if you're looking at real estate, you're already flipping. He gave you some really good golden nuggets. Now it's time for you to take action on them. If you're in the Gainesville market, if you don't see the opportunity before you, got somebody that's flipping 30 houses. How about they buy 5, 10, 15 from you? And all you need to do is get your butt out of your seat, off the couch, out there and find the deals and give Viktor a call. So folks, that is taking action. And like I said earlier, on your journey to becoming a rebel banker, that's what you're going to have to do, is stop thinking knowledge is the power and start understanding it's the application of that knowledge that's really going to do it for you. So folks, get it, make it happen. And thank you for joining us for another episode of the Real Estate Money School. We'll see you on the next one.